Welcome back, everybody. Appreciate you jumping on to Freedom Formula, and today gonna get to spend some time with Kevin, who I was checking out Instagram a little bit, trying to snoop on you a little bit, see what we got going on. And the biggest thing I took away from Instagram, just to kind of start this out there, was you feel very intentional as a human, and in today's day and age, that's a I don't want to say it's rare because there are a bunch of intentional people out there, but I just got this feeling of just true authenticity, and you're out there trying to help people. You're out there trying to just spread the word. And that to me is just kind of an important thing. For me, relationships are one of the things I love most in life. Like, I wouldn't get to sit here, have this conversation if it wasn't for my relationships in my professional and personal career. And
Mm.
I just always hold those near and dear. So, just I'd say start off, tell everybody who you are, what you do, like maybe a little bit of the background, and then I don't know, give me a little bit of why I'm feeling intentionality behind you from Instagram.
Well, one, I appreciate that so very much. I appreciate the compliment. I'm excited to be here. You and I had a little chat behind the scenes. I feel like we're two peas in a pod. So today I am the founder and the host of Next Level University, a global top 100 podcast with 1,993 episodes, I think, as of today. Listeners in 175 plus countries and over 1 million listens in the grand scheme of things, which is awesome. Super, super proud, super grateful. But obviously that's not where I started. It has been a heck of a journey to get there. I was raised by my mom and my grandmother. I didn't know my dad. I didn't meet my dad with the understanding that he was my dad until I was 27. Obviously, that plays a role in a young man's life. So that's something I'm still working through to this day, and I'm more than happy to discuss. Lower middle class, didn't have a lot of money, and I just didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So after high school, I just got a job at the gas station and said, all right, I'm going to try to figure out kind of how to take my life from here. And I left that job, and I was a personal trainer, and I was a truck driver, and I was a forklift operator, and I cleaned floors and bathrooms at a hospital, construction, tiling, on-call firefighter for a very short amount of time. Somehow, Steve, eventually I achieved some level of quote unquote success in my mid 20s, and I still ended up sitting on the edge of a bed contemplating suicide the next year. And that really became I need to redefine success for me. I feel like I thought all of the external stuff was going to fix the internal voids. And I think that's why you feel some level of intentionality, is because I want to know why. I want to dig deep. I want to have the truth of why I am who I am. And I just want to show up as me. I've worked so hard to just try to be confident enough to be myself. And that's kind of the layer I'm trying to lean into, is I just want to be me. I want to, if I feel like I'm somebody who can make people laugh, I want to do that. Yeah, I'm into self-improvement, but it doesn't mean I can't have a whiskey on the weekend. Like, I want to be authentic. I want to be me. And I think I'm finally at the place where I feel confident enough to do that.
I
Would be
love
the
it. I
answer.
love it. You mentioned whiskey, so obviously before we started talking, I was like, just kind of hanging out in the living room, enjoying a scotch. I started a whiskey club during COVID because I enjoy the taste and the journey of those different things. I certainly don't drink every night, and whatnot, but it's just part of life experiencing and to try new things. So I hear you loud and clear on I want to be really healthy, but I also can be healthy enough to enjoy some of the other things in life that would definitely be classified as not healthy. But one or two probably
Yeah,
isn't the thing that's killing us right now. There's other things out there that are worse.
100%, 100%. And I think the only way, well, at least this is what it was for me, is I overswung. It was, I
Yeah.
don't do that. I'm in self-improvement. I can't do that. I have a channel and a company built around self-improvement. And then you start to resent certain pieces of it, and you say, well, am I losing my authenticity? Am I losing my essence? Am I losing my personality because of this? And I think I think life is just a pendulum swinging back and forth. And as we become more self-aware and certain, the pendulum swings less and less, just less and less. And I think now it's just swinging
Yeah.
less
I
than it
mean,
ever
I,
has.
I think that's kind of why as people get older, they speak their minds a little bit more and give a little bit of a less shit about what they say and what they think and what
It's
people think
fair.
about them, because their pendulum ain't swinging anymore. They are who they are. Their real selves is coming out. So I definitely want to. I think I'm always striving to find that, but I'd rather find that at 35, 40 than wait until I'm 70. You know.
Same, same. And I think that's what, I don't know about you. I don't know what your journey was leading up to this, but having suicidal ideations at 26, 27, it speeds up the process of
Yeah,
contemplation,
I could
right?
imagine. I grew up poor and everything as well, double wide, and lived with my mom and heroin addict and all these fun things. She lost custody of me, came back to my father in third grade, and just all that fun stuff. But
Mm,
I've never contemplated suicide, so I can't relate, but I can only begin the idea of understanding like the depth that you go through to think through those things, but then also on the other side to not have to think through those things anymore. So to your point, like contemplation, I can only imagine. So we're gonna have some good fun
mhm.
conversations, and at some point we have to have that whiskey, and just those conversations will get really entertaining.
I'm in, and now I know you do jujitsu, so we could do a little bit of light grappling amongst friends. It's gonna, that's a time of the
Do
life.
jujitsu is a really strong. That's a strong claim. I have
Have
done
done
once,
once.
and today
Yeah, yeah,
cannot
same
move
thing.
very well. It's not helping because I just entered a reverse diet strength hypertrophy phase, 3 hard days in a row, and then decided to cap that off with a fourth workout in 3 days, which was jujitsu for my first time. So this body is definitely hurting right now, but it's a good hurt. I get to do the hurt. So,
Yes, yeah, it's a
but
privileged pain.
so hopping on, you were kind of like, hey, I thought I was fit in all these pieces. So obviously, health is important to you in your life, and one of our big pillars here is health, and it's important to me. I've been in personal training in some way, shape, or form since 2006. It's funny you mentioned the firefighter thing. I was actually a volunteer firefighter for about 13 years. Time became
My
my
goodness.
issue, but some similarities there. But talk to me about the health journey a little bit. You know, I believe very much your health, not only the go to the gym and eat well and exercise thing, but there's the mental side of things, which obviously you've gone through a journey there. But talk to me about health a little bit, and what's one big thing you might share with somebody listening today that is just, hey, if you can make a change in your life, this is going to be something that's impactful, or at least it was for you.
Yeah, so I was the little dude in high school. Just, I mean, I'm 5'5" today. I think I was probably like 5'3" in high school. And I remember thinking I'm probably not going to get any taller. And there was a gym down the street, so let me go give this a shot. And here's the other interesting thing too. While I didn't know my dad, and I honestly didn't know what he looked like, I always heard stories of how strong he was. So word on the street, is this real or not? I don't know. There was no cell phone cameras back then to tell me if it was or not. But word on the street was he took a 12-speed bicycle and wrapped it around a telephone pole when he was angry one day. Okay, that's some strength. So I feel like I had good genetics. So at 16, I started going to the gym and practicing bodybuilding and the pre-exhaust method and the 5x5 and trying all this stuff, the Arnold workouts. Like, let me see what this is all about. And I just fell in love with fitness. I just absolutely fell in love with it because it was that one time where I could go somewhere and nothing else mattered. That was one piece. And the other piece was the weights just don't care. You had a good day, doesn't matter. You had a bad day, doesn't matter. You think you're strong, doesn't matter. It's just accuracy. And I really appreciated the accuracy. So 2 years later, I said, you know what I want to do with my life? I want to be a professional fighter. If I could do that, that would be the best thing ever. So I would work at the gas station, go lift weights for an hour and a half, go home, eat a big meal, and then I'd go grapple for like 2 or 3 hours. And that became my life for a few years. And it was just incredible. I just felt so healthy and so capable and so strong. And I fell in love with martial arts. And then I just kept up with it. I kept up with bodybuilding and fitness and running and martial arts and trying to have a healthy diet. And then in 2015, I did my first bodybuilding show, and that was terrible, absolutely horrible. And after that, I definitely had an eating disorder. It was brutal. It took me a while to recover from that. And then now I'm back to bodybuilding and just doing it from a perspective of I want to do it because I enjoy it. Right now I'm dieting, but not for a show, not for a photo shoot. I just want to get back into a certain, I want to look a certain way. And honestly, I think if I could give one piece of advice, super simple, it's going to seem overly simplistic. Focus on sleep as much as you focus on anything else. I was that dude who would sleep 4 hours a night, get up and do the thing, and then say, cool, I did the thing. Now I track my sleep every night. My wife and I bought separate beds so we can sleep near each other but not connected. So if I toss and turn, it doesn't disturb her. And when I get really good sleep, I just operate so much better. And I just think that's something that seems to a lot of us like a waste of time. Seems like we're not going to get a return on an investment. Your brain health is directly connected to the amount of sleep you get. I mean, that's one of the best things you can do. That's one of the 20% activities that'll give you 80% of the results. So yeah, it would be that. Let's take a look at where is the opportunity that we could optimize our sleep a little bit
Yeah,
better.
it's interesting you mentioned sleep. So I've always been I love sleep, I prioritize sleep person, right? It's never, I mean, don't get me wrong, I was a teenager and 20s in college at one point in time. So why not stay up to
Yeah.
see the sun come up type stuff? But in my adult life, sleep has always been important because I just feel better the next day. I'm less cranky. But recently I had a conversation around the idea. So growth hormone is obviously an important thing, especially if you're somebody who wants any level of muscle and lean mass on your body. Well, the peak of your hormone production, growth hormone specifically, happens somewhere around 90 to 120 minutes after you fall asleep. So that's one thing where, okay, great. I want that peak to happen. Now, one thing we've always heard, oh, don't eat late. It's bad for you and everything like that. And it's this whole like, chances are if you're eating at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, it's not healthy eating. So you probably shouldn't be doing it, but maybe you could. The thing that was really this, oh, wow, I could see how this stemmed from it was growth hormone production peaks an hour and a half to 2 hours after going to bed. Growth hormone impact on your body is significantly increased on an empty stomach. It takes you somewhere around 90 to 120 minutes to get everything out of your stomach and through and into your intestines. So if you want your growth hormone to do the best job possible, you need to not eat somewhere around an hour and a half to 2 hours before bed. So that way, when it peaks, you're good to go. And you start thinking through all this stuff and like, wow, if muscle's important to me, we know that lean muscle mass is an indicator of metabolic health, an indicator of longevity. I'm just going to not eat after 7:30 and make sure I consume the calories I need to. So that way growth hormone has the best impact for me based upon all of these functions. And the average person, they don't want to learn all those things. That's a lot of stuff. But that's why I'm happy to be surrounded by all of the people that are really smart in those things where it's not about not eating late. It's about I actually want the hormones to do the best thing for me because I am spending an hour and a half to 2 hours most days taking care of myself, the gym, the sauna, the cold plunge, the cardio, the whatever it is. Just eat an hour earlier and be done. So that way the rest of stuff happens. So just the sleep thing's intriguing
Yeah.
to me.
Well, I think we're so good at saying, what do I do? Like, what are the tactics that I do? Like, what are the boxes that I check? I know getting 8 hours or 7 hours of sleep doesn't seem like a box worth checking, but it's just one of those things that pays
Oh yeah.
dividends forever. I notice such a difference consciously and cognitively. If I'm running on 5 hours of sleep, my memory's not as good. I can't speak as well, but it takes having 4 hours for a while and then having 8 hours for a while to recognize the difference. So yeah, it's interesting. It's one of those things that I think a lot of us just don't do because it seems
Yeah.
like a
No, I
waste in a way.
100% agree. Definitely one of the top ones to focus on. So, well, talk to me more about what you do on a day-to-day basis. Like who are you busy helping? What's your company? You mentioned what you do and what you kind of founder of. Like just talk a little bit more about that, what that does, who that serves, and what are your skill sets maybe from the business perspective of this thing as well. I'm always curious there because I like to jam on business.
Yeah, of course, of course. So we do a podcast episode every day. So we do an episode 7 days a week. That's like the big thing for us is we want to add as much value as humanly possible to as many people as possible. So that's like our scale thing. We can do that, goes out to thousands of people. Awesome. Underneath that, we have one-on-one coaching for business owners. We have group coaching for podcasters. We do live events, whether in person or virtual. We have a journal that we have on Amazon. We have an app that's in development that's created to help people be more consistent with habit tracking. All of that within the self-improvement realm. Then eventually it got to the place where people started asking me for podcast help. So now I almost exclusively work one-on-one with podcasters. My business partner now works one-on-one with business owners. So it's become this Next Level University is holistic self-improvement for dream chasers. Podcast Growth University is a podcast about podcasts that has its own business attached. And then my business partner has Business Growth University, which is his own podcast about business that has his own thing attached to it. So it's really this interesting thing how everything feeds the next thing. Essentially on a day-to-day basis, I am doing this. And if I'm not doing this, I am living in WhatsApp, making sure that all of our clients are being taken care of. So right now we produce 58 podcasts. So there's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of stuff. There's intro music. There's just a lot of stuff going on. So I would say my skill set is customer service and just understanding how one thing affects the 7 things that are going to have to happen after, and then trying to figure out from a time perspective how long that is going to take so we can deliver on that. I would say that's probably one of the big things. And I think the other thing I'm really good at that isn't always good unless you have somebody on the opposite front is I'm really good at getting things started. But then I get to a point where I get stuck and I need someone who can see high level, like where in the maze am I? And why do I keep running into this wall? But I'm somebody who takes action relatively quickly. So if you give me a new idea like that, I'm not going to eat after 7:30, maybe ever again now, based on our
hour and a half before when you go to bed. I'm sleeping around 9:15. So
same.
No strip on at 8:30,
yeah.
night guard in at 9. Like I am hot right before bed. Sometimes some mouth tape and everything like that, but 90-ish minutes before you go to sleep.
Yeah. So for me now, that's a new thing that I don't know if I can ever I can't unlearn that. Now it's like, I think I have to do that now. That has to be part of the ritual. That's one of the things that I'm pretty good at taking action because I don't have perfectionism. I don't care. The first version's not going to be great, but unless the first version exists, I can't do a second version. And that's something I'm grateful to have a pretty good relationship with, because I know that can be a challenge for a lot of people. So I would say those are probably the 2 main things for me.
So how'd you get into this? Like, what was obviously you went through life and you had, I want to help other people not go through life. Like I heard that loud and clear, but, I don't think I would have been like, oh, I could see that line. So like, how did it truly start? What did that look like? And I think maybe point of view there's a lot of people that I get to come in contact with on a frequent basis where it's like, I feel stuck. I just don't know what to do. I don't enjoy my day to day. I want to go do something, but I don't know if I can take the risk. Like there's so many things that get in the way, and sometimes they're very real. Sometimes it's very manufactured. So just talk to me about that a little bit, because you've managed to accomplish a lot going through what you've gone through.
So when I was 25, from all outside external standpoints, I had it all. I was competing in a bodybuilding show, so I was in the best shape of my life. Girlfriend was a model, high paying job, nice car, new apartment, great friends. Everything seemed amazing. But I was super insecure, super unconfident, all of that, just in a very, very bad headspace. My girlfriend left me, as she should have, because I wasn't a very supportive partner. When she left me, I convinced myself that I should make more money and that would solve the rest of my problems. So I proceeded to try to make as much money as possible, and I succeeded in that. And I had a moment where I was opening my final pay stub of the year. And I remember expecting to have this flood of all these really good feelings. And I remember when I opened it up, I remember thinking to myself, I don't feel any different than I did yesterday. I feel exactly the same. Bank account's better, but I still feel exactly the same. For most of my life, I had lived unconsciously. The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. So I remember having that thought of, I want to live more hyperconsciously, whatever that means. My business partner and co-host had a YouTube channel at the time. He said, hey, I'd love to interview you on fitness. Just did a bodybuilding show, fitness, discipline, mindset. Okay. Did an hour and a half interview. It felt like it was 5 minutes. I said, imagine if you could do that for a living. He said, there's people out there that do. I started the Hyperconscious podcast like the next week. And I just want to have cool conversations with cool people. Let's see what happens. So I fell in love with podcasting, but I was still working this job that I started to loathe and I started to hate. Required a lot of travel. It was weird hours. I was living in hotels. It was just not good. But I had to make money, so I had to keep going. And I just hated my job more and more and more and more and more, to the point where I was having suicidal ideations. Had a talk with my friend who then became my business partner. And I ended up leaving that job 2 or 3 months later because I was just so miserable. And then we started the process of trying to figure out, what do we do with this thing? We have a podcast now. We partnered up. To your point, circumstantially, I know most people don't have that choice. Car was paid off. I moved in with my buddy for $500 a month. I had very low expenses. So not everybody can do that. That's what I did. And my mental health got drastically better when I left my job. I mean, my depression, Steve, went away completely. Anxiety got way worse because there was way more uncertainty in my life. But
that's a part of the recipe of a successful business owner. Anxiousness, somewhere between 4 and 10 every day.
We call it proactive paranoia. Is productive or proactive, however you want to label it. Yeah, so for me, I fell in love with self-improvement. Somebody introduced me to a similar medium as podcasting. I had enough pain and necessity where I said, I want to do something a little bit different than I'm doing while I still make money. And then I got all the necessity of, if I keep living my life like this, it might not stay for very much longer. I love this thing. Let me give it a shot. And I also have a business partner who is unbelievably intelligent and has so much self-belief that he was like, dude, we're not going to fail. It's not going to happen. We'll find a way no matter what. And yeah, we fell in love with the process of adding value in the very beginning. So yeah, it all started from an understanding that if I could do this for a living, I would be the most fulfilled person ever. This would be like the dream life. How many people actually get to live their dreams? Let me give this a shot while I'm young and I don't have that many responsibilities, because eventually I will regret it if I don't. And then the mission just became survive. Like, just, if I can get to the end of the day and have enough money to pay the bills, end of the week, end of the month, end of the year, that's kind of how we lived the first 2 or 3 years of this. Yeah.
It's how most business owners live. It's why if you have a job and you have expenses in a life, don't just quit your job. Have a little bit of a plan.
It sounds so sexy to say I quit and I went all in, but let me tell you, it's not that sexy.
That financial strain ruins more ridiculously amazing ideas than anything else. Because you eventually get put in a spot where you're either successful or you're not. And it usually happens way quicker than you want to. Because let's face it, every project we do, every business we run costs way more money than we ever assume it will. Even if it's $500 versus the 300 we thought, which at the time is still a massive 70% increase.
Yeah. And it takes, that's the thing. Like, I love social media in terms of the opportunity to impact people, but everybody kind of makes it look way easier than it is.
Yeah, well, because it's not sexy to throw the pictures and the stories up of you sucking. It's only good to go rent the car and be like, yeah, I'm freaking awesome. Look at me. Like, it's just, it's the reality of it. Not many people are truly very real on social media from that side of things.
Yeah. And I understand. If I was like riding the struggle bus right now, I think it would be way harder for me to be vulnerable and authentic. It's like, you probably don't want to see me crying into my pillow every night. That's not exactly, Oscar worthy content. You don't, but if I make it and then I show you a picture, that contrast is hopefully inspiring. So Yeah, social media is a whole weird thing.
Oh, it's a journey. I've always resisted so hard. A little over a year ago, I finally made the commitment. I was like, I'm gonna finally be consistent. I see that my first step in social media journey for my business world is just be consistent and not care about the metrics at all. I did it. Posted 365 times and 365 more than 365 and 365. And thank God I didn't care about the metrics because it was like on average 1.7 reactions per the things that I did. And the one was
Mm.
me. So it's like, man, if I cared, I definitely wouldn't have kept going. But now this year, it's like, all right, well, it's no longer about consistency, about doing better and actually creating things that people care about and engaging. And oddly, it's more than 1.7 now. The one is still me. Like I'm still
Nice.
there, very much supporting myself. I'm going to tell you that. But I'm growing that side. But it's the thing you focus on, right? Like you have to go and put the time
Yeah.
and attention, and just you got to be willing to put the effort in and be willing to get kicked in the teeth multiple times. I find.
You got to plant
Yeah.
seeds. You just got to go out and plant seeds with everything, whether it's business, social media, sales, everything. That's all you're doing. And some of those seeds will grow and most of
Yep.
them will not. And that's okay. That is just par for the course. But to your point, I think it starts from a place of sustainability. Let me start something that I can
Yeah.
do sustainably. Then let me practice that thing consistently. Then let me
Yep.
improve that. Then boop, you get up to level 2 and you do the same thing. Right? We do an episode every day now. Awesome. Couldn't do that in the beginning. Wasn't sustainable. But we have a team and video editors and audio editors. So I can be here with you while other
Yeah.
things are getting done. That wasn't sustainable in the beginning, but now it is because of little 1% shifts. There was never one thing that broke the bank or blew us up. It was very, very, very small, minute things every day for the last 8 years.
0.1% every day.
That's it.
0.1%.
That's it.
So as we were starting out, is just, wanted to highlight the thing that you're really thinking about today. You're focusing on a lot of the conversations, and you brought up the idea of ego and entitlement and all of those things. And I'm going to preface this question with I have a 14-year-old and love her to death. She is my life, but my life's mission is to make sure she doesn't grow up with the ego and the entitlement, because her life doesn't suck, right? Like, not
Mm.
generationally speaking, growing up in the 80s and 90s, on average, your life was significantly, call it, worse, less access, less things. We didn't have phone. We didn't have all this stuff that make life easy. But
Yeah.
reality is nobody today understands that because there's no comparison. Like we realize that. And, my daughter comes up, here's my new music. I'm like, oh, that sucks. It's not what I used to listen to. Same thing my father would say to me. Well, it's just because we have that experience and she doesn't have it. So, but she is entitled as can be, as much as I try to make sure she's not. She's better than the average. I will say that, but she's still an entitled
Mm.
14-year-old. So talk to me about the ego stuff, the entitlement stuff, like just the generational things that we seem to be seeing these days as you're kind of thinking through it today.
Yeah. So the high level thought anytime I talk about ego, one, Tony Robbins has this TED talk where he talks about the 6 basic human needs. Great TED talk, one of the best I've ever seen. At the end of the day, everybody is just trying to get their needs met, and we all do it in different ways. Sometimes we want to get our need of significance met, so we have an ego flare because we're actually insecure and we're not confident enough to admit that. So it throws everything into this whole confusing mess. And I think that's what happens with kids because they're just
Yep.
insecure. They're not ready to face the truth. Ego at its deepest level is meant to protect us from truths that we're not ready for yet. But the problem is we convince ourselves that we're not ready for certain truths that we are ready for that would be instrumental in our growth. So that's one thought. The other thought is there's a lot of people, unfortunately, and again, this is my perspective, that are confusing arrogance for confidence. Because it seems like, oh, that is something I would like to aspire to. I would like to aspire to not caring what people think and saying exactly what I think, even if it might be at the detriment of those people around me. That's what I aspire to, because that seems like the polar opposite of where I am. When in reality, I don't think that's sustainable for most people. And here's the problem: we don't know if those people are actually confident. They might just be super insecure and they overcorrect with ego. They end up arrogant, but it comes off that way. I think the only real answer is we have to figure out who we actually are behind the scenes. Because no matter how you feel in a group of people, no matter how you feel in a podcast at the gym, awesome. I think what really matters is how you feel when you're alone and there's nobody around, and there's no input, there's no music, there's no TV. I think that's where we can really figure out, do I have an ego? Am I under? Do I have low self-worth? Do I have low self-belief? Am I somebody who is a little bit arrogant and entitled and I think I should be getting stuff regardless of any effort? Because at the end of the day, while being confused about that can affect the people around you, the person it's going to affect the most is you. And there's been a common theme with the people that we've been able to help the most. They're usually very humble and potentially self-deprecating, and they have very low self-worth and self-belief. The people we've never been able to help are the people who are delusionally high self-worth and just filled with ego. That's going to really affect them more than it's going to affect us in the long run. So it's just been this interesting thing of, if you said to me 8 years ago, Kev, there's two people, and again, this isn't from a place of judgment. One has very low self-worth and very low self-belief, but they're humble enough to listen to good advice when they're given it. Second person is somebody who is hyper capable, very smart, but they're kind of entitled and they're delusional in what they think is going to happen in their life. Who would you pick? I think I probably would have chose the second one at the beginning of this journey. Now, first person all the time, way easier to work with. It's way easier to build somebody up than it is to break somebody down. And we've just seen that time and time again. It's, you get to a certain point where you're working with someone and there's always an issue. Well, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. And then you look into the past and they've never had a successful team. They've never been able to run a certain thing in a certain way successfully. And it's like, that's a you thing. That's because you're entitled and the people around you don't want to be surrounded by entitlement, just like I don't. But now you're making the external world to blame. And it's just this weird, wonky thing. So we've had the opportunity to study a lot of people at this time. And that's one of the things that I think ego is going to keep you safe, but it's also going to keep you guarded. It's going to probably keep you from meeting people that really care about you. And it's most likely going to, it's either going to stop you from getting success or it's going to stop you from getting success and fulfillment, depending on the person. So that is my monologue about ego and entitlement.
I mean, I love it. I think ego, simply put, is just one of those things that gets in the way of your growth. Because if you have an ego, there's this the idea that you know everything, and there's actually a psychological principle or theory behind it, and I don't know the name, but the general idea is, if you listen to a conversation, you read a book, you attend a training, whatever it is, if you show up and within the first period of time, 5 minutes or so, are like, oh, I know this already, I've heard this already, the rest of the time of that conversation, that presentation, that whatever you're ingesting, is now effectively a waste of time, because you will never pull out a positive nugget. The reality is, if you can sit there and actually have conversations in your brain of like, all right, cool, like, yeah, I've heard this before, but maybe there's a different way for me to leverage this. What else is going on? Because as humans, like, not that we don't learn more, but the new things we learn are usually, it's a twist of something we kind of knew. It's a reminder of something we once heard. There's not a ton of new information in the world, right? It's positioned differently. We heard it differently. It's given differently. And that becomes the thing where you're shutting yourself down from learning something that's potentially so valuable, it could change your life, by presenting that ego out there. And like, hey, try, you might be the smartest person in the room. Try to be the dumbest and you're going to learn something no matter how good you are. Some people don't get it.
Yeah. It's I'm lucky. I think I feel pretty lucky because I started on the low self belief, low self worth. I never thought I was good enough for anything. I don't feel entitled to anything. The reason I'm not more successful is because I haven't done what it takes to be more successful yet, and that's just the truth of it. But that can be a very challenging
Mm-hmm.
truth to look at. So I do understand why at times we would rather have false information. There's a book called Same as Ever by
Okay.
Morgan Housel. And there's a quote in that book that has stuck with me maybe more than any other quote ever has. It said, many people would rather be certain than accurate. And that is so powerful because we see it. How many fad diets just are stupid, but they give you certainty. It's like, well, yeah, I just don't eat anything that starts in the letter B. Perfect. Yeah, perfectly. Yeah, no, I know exactly what to do. It's not accurate, but it's certain. That's one of the most powerful quotes ever. And I see that everywhere. And I see that in myself too. I see that in myself. I used to like to smoke a lot of weed back in the day. And I only found the certainty in the information that I wanted. Like a lot of healthy people smoke weed. This is fine. People, there's no stats or research that proves that this is bad. Then eventually it was like, I don't think this is probably the best thing for me. So let me experiment a more accurate understanding. But it made me sad when I had to change my behavior. I didn't want to change my behavior. It made me question everything. So yeah, there's a big difference between certainty and accuracy. And I think certainty helps the ego. Accuracy helps humility because it might force you to question everything that you once believed.
It's funny you say that. And that type of person, I find, like you gave the example, don't eat anything that starts with B. That's also the person that will rationalize eating sourdough bread because it's not just bread. And going down that road of like, come on now, like you don't see that being the issue, just as the example. So that felt like a
fair.
softball toss coming in. I had to mention it. So
home run,
but
home run.
so transitioning over to like the wealth and the money side, you've said that you've had a job, well paying, you've been at positions, cars paid off, all these things. I think today is a very interesting time where there's a lot of money in a lot of different ways flying around, but people are seemingly, especially if you listen to the news, poorer than ever or richer than ever.
Yeah.
And that gap is just spreading. And I believe that actually to be true for different reasons though. And I think we're fed a lot of information that we're supposed to believe. So from a wealth side of the world, what do you do? What do you think about? Do you play in the stock market world, or how much do you love crypto? Do you have the newest and latest meme coin? Are you somebody like you're a super big saver and make sure you have no debt? Like what are some of your hacks? And I ask because for me, I was always poor with money. I was always bad with money. Around 2010, I had opened my first business and I had the fortunate luck of having individuals who were making a couple $100,000 a year of income being C-level employees of big corporations. And one of them had taught me the rule of 72. And rule of 72, how much so you take the interest you're earning, divide that into 72, and that tells you how many years it'll take to double your principal money. And for me, I was always like, oh, who cares about this $2 and something cent like interest payment? That's not motivating. Well, if I could flip it around and go down the road of, all right, well, if I can get 7.2% interest, that means I can double my money in just 10 years. And then it grew to like, well, if I can get 7.2, how do I get 14.4? How do I increase these things? So I'm always curious, like the wealth side of things. What do you do? What's the thing that motivates you? Because I find a lot of people just aren't motivated to make change because it's easier not to, and they don't have that intrinsic drive.
Yeah, so we're fairly reckless. And all I mean by that is essentially, so I don't even get a salary. I don't even pull a salary. I get enough to cover my bills, and then everything gets reinvested in the business. So for us, If, let's say, we have a bad year and the business grows 20%, I'm good with putting all my money into that and growing at 20% because what we can do with the money in the business is more than I would probably do in the stock market. I like the
Yep.
control of it. I like to be able to pull the levers and say, this is how much we have, and this is what our expected this year is. And, oh, do we need a new blank that will produce blank amount? So yeah, almost everything for us is just reinvested into the business because that's the biggest and best snowball we have going. The shift that has helped me a ton is connecting it to bodybuilding. When you work really hard to get abs, you work even harder to keep them. And I think one of the false narratives that I used to have is when you make a lot of money, it gives you the opportunity to spend a lot of money. The more money I make, the less money I want to spend now. That's like a reframe. So I have to sell myself on why I should order pizza. Sell Kev, sell yourself on why you shouldn't just eat the ground turkey that you have in the freezer. That has been a very different thing. I think for me, the discipline of not spending money is far harder than the discipline of me making it. So that has been a paradigm shift for me. I'm not up to speed on the coins, and I think I'm not willing to put in the amount of time to actually learn it. I'd rather just get better at business because I'm in control of it. And could I get better returns somewhere else? Sure. Yeah, I'm sure I probably could. Would I be in the same amount of control? No. And would I be able to leverage the compound effect as well as I can within the business? Probably not. So for us, it's all reinvest into our snowball. Always, 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 just because that's what we have the most control over. And I like the certainty of that. So yeah, being debt free obviously is super helpful. That's something we're working towards as a business. I mean, we've obviously accrued debt to get to where we are. But right now we are in a hyper focused phase of manufactured scarcity. Yes, we have good amount of money in the bank. Let's pretend we have none. We're not allowed to go below a certain point. If we do, alarm bells start ringing and we have to change some things. So yeah, as we've made more money, I've gotten more disciplined. YouTube TV was like 60 or $75 a month. I never watched it. We canned it. My wife and I get on the same Spotify account. So we've done a lot of things just to optimize, even though we don't necessarily have to. It's weird. It's weird how it's happened that way.
Well, and I think, you work hard to earn a dollar, and on the other side of that, you start to correlate that effort versus the thing that you're spending the money on. I had heard I think it was a YouTube video, and I don't recall the exact piece of it, but it was the general question of, is whatever I'm buying now worth 5 to 10 times more than it actually? So if you're going to go out and spend $10 on something, is it worth $100? And listen, you find a bottle of water in the desert and you haven't had water for 3 days, it's worth $100 all day long. But
For sure.
can you just bring around your reusable water and fill it up instead of continually buy water bottles while you're at home when you have access? Well, that's a heck of a lot cheaper to fill that up. Yeah, I spent $35 on the cup, but I fill it 35 times and now the cup is free, right? So
Yeah.
you start to just value the effort and the time input required to make the active money. And then, like you said, you know what you're in control of and how you can go leverage that money. I mean, leverage is the key, right? If you can leverage your dollars and cents to grow your skills and your smarts to get 20% returns every year, that's a pretty darn good return. That's beating the stock market, just so you know. So
That's the goal. That's the goal. And I can do it in a
yeah.
super aligned way by living my dream and getting to add value into people's lives. I mean, that's really what we're aiming for anyway. And to your point, the bed that my wife and I bought is kind of expensive, but it's helping me sleep more, which will make me more productive, which will be a positive ROI this month, this year, maybe within the next couple of years for sure. So I think it's also one of the things that's been very beneficial for me is just having a little bit of a longer time perspective when it comes to money. For me, it was make 1,000, spend 1,100. That seems good. Like we can do that. Now things pay off for longer than I thought they did. I just never had the time perspective and or belief to see it that far out. So that's been something that's been super helpful. And I think it's just building confidence just little by little along
Love
the
it.
way.
Well, dude, this has been amazing. But where, talk to us around where can people find more about you? Where can people find more out about your business? Like, how do people get in contact, and what's a big thing you're working on that everybody should be aware of and just keep an eye out for?
I appreciate that. So we were just on a podcast before this, and I realized our website is just way out of date. But nextleveluniverse.com is the website. There is a lot of stuff on there. So we have a free book club, and there's a whole bunch of stuff for you if you're interested in diving deep into self-improvement. Make sure you listen to Steve's episode and do all his stuff before you come over to us. I want to make sure Steve gets the love that he deserves as a great host. What are we working on? Just trying to get a little bit better. Yeah, we don't have anything. We have a virtual event coming up. It's a full day event. Tickets are $47. It's all about health, wealth, life, and love, much like we talked about today. But outside of that, we just kind of do the unsexy fundamentals on repeat. So the podcast will be there for you every day if you're ever listening, if you're ever looking for an episode.
All right, fantastic. Well, Kevin, I appreciate your time. I know everybody listening in also does as well. This was great, man. I appreciate getting to know you a little bit more. I know I was excited to chat after
likewise, brother.
Snooping on Instagram a little bit. So looking forward to it and the relationship from here. But anyways, thank you again. I appreciate it. I hope everybody watching in also got something out of this. Find those nuggets. Don't show up just thinking you know every single piece. Go follow Kevin. Go get some more advice from him, and go check out Next Level You.